Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis. I'm a marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor trained in trauma and addiction. The Asking Why podcast is for anyone on a journey of healing and restoration. If you are searching for answers to life's questions and want to learn more about root causes from a psychological and theological mix, this show is for you. In this podcast, myself and a co-host from Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness will interview guests on a wide range of topics in order to get down to the heart of the problems facing our world and understand why things happen and how to change the world and ourselves for the better. Want to learn more tips and tricks to living a healthy lifestyle? Visit us at Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to meet our staff or book a speaker, go to clintdaviscounseling.com. Thanks for listening and be sure to subscribe today. All right, welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since we've done a podcast, so I've been off a little bit, and we had a cancellation because of COVID, so we're back with episode 41 of the Asking Why podcast with Clint Davis. And we have today Andy and Natalee, and I'm glad to have you guys here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Enneagram. That's been kind of a popular personality type that's come up in the last, it's been around for a long time. You can tell me more about it. But there's Myers-Briggs, there's spiritual giftings, there's all these kind of things. And so we found that the Enneagram has been helpful to give people kind of a view of their personality and marriage and conflict and work. And yeah, it's not the end all be all. We don't want to present it as if it's, something that's 100% true for everybody and you have to live by it. And John Chris does a really funny skit on it. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. But anyway, you can go and watch that somewhere else. So tell us who you are. I know Andy's been on the podcast before. If you haven't listened to him, he is an ex-firefighter, and you should go listen to his podcast. I think it's like episode 3. But it's amazing. So Andy, introduce yourself, and then we'll go with Natalee afterwards. Since Andy's already been on here and kind of done the thing, we'll let him warm up.
Yeah. So I'm Andy Bond. I've been working here for about 15 months, and I'm a pastoral counselor, and not too long ago completed my pastoral sexual addiction training. So yeah, that's really about it, man.
I know you keep adding letters.
Yeah, no, it's nice, man.
I know.
Got a certified Enneagram coach.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's kind of what led us into me talking to you about having this podcast. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so you recently went through the training to be certified so you could use that tool in your practice. And
Yes, yeah, because I was introduced to it when I first started working here by Natalee. She made a comment one day about the Enneagram, and I was like, what are they talking about? And I heard y'all mention it in staff meeting, and then, man, once I started to learn about it, I was like, man, there's something to this.
Yeah.
So
what's your number?
I'm an 8, wing 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what that means in a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. And so married, kids?
Yep, I'm married. My wife, Michelle, and I have been married 14 years. She is a 2, wing 1.
Okay.
So I got some wonderful stories to tell about that. And I have 3 kids. My 13-year-old boy is a 7. My 12-year-old, I'm still kind of up in the air. I think Avery's her name. I believe she is a 1. And then the 7-year-old, while still young, there's no doubt in my mind she's an 8. She is, you don't have to wonder what she's thinking.
Yeah, That's awesome. And people will figure those numbers out, so those will make sense, and we'll come back to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Natalee?
Okay, so I'm the same thing, I guess. Licensed pastoral counselor here. I started off as your assistant.
That's right.
So I just kind of heard about the program through Andy and Uriah, and then I was like, I want to do that. So then I did it, and I've been doing that since last December. So
licensed pastoral counselor.
yes.
Yep. And then you're getting your master's right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mental health counseling.
And where are you doing that?
LSUS.
Right. So Natalee was a lifesaver for me. She, I needed a personal assistant or somebody to help me keep my life together. And I am a 2. Did you say what you were?
Mm-mm.
Oh, what are you?
I'm a 1, wing 9.
Okay. And I'm a 2, wing 3. And so I am not a very detail-oriented person. And Andy will tell some stories about that, I'm sure. And so I was just like, the business was growing, and I was praying about somebody coming, and Natalee came in. And as a 1, which will make sense later, she was fantastic. And then, I just really respected you and thought you've been an amazing person. And so as you've been trying to work on your counseling stuff and wanting to do this, I was like, what a better transition to get to know somebody as a personal assistant, and really that helped me with my stuff and knew a lot about the practice and what was going on to transition into being a counselor. And so now, you're rocking and rolling and seeing clients. And
Yep.
working on your master's and
teens mostly.
Yeah, Natalee
much.
recently did a group on technology and social media, and people have loved that and continuing to do that. So
Yep, got one going now for body image and self-confidence.
yeah, that's right. So hopefully we're going to branch that out with Ashley and Rachel, our dietitians, and do some body image work and eating disorders and stuff like that. So glad to have you, Natalee. Yep.
And shout out to Natalee in the group. Avery, my 12-year-old daughter, was actually in her group and loved it.
Yeah.
And it helped her tremendously.
That's awesome.
Because I can't really identify with being a 12-year-old girl as much as, one of my colleagues who is a female.
That's right. Married, kids, tell us about that.
Married, 3 years in next March.
What's Daniel?
He is I think he's a 1 wing 2. He's not into personality tests, so.
What's that make him when you're not into it?
Yeah,
Probably
a boy.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So yeah, he's a 1 wing 2 or 2 wing 1. We'll go with that.
Okay.
He's never taken the test, but I would definitely stick him there.
Okay.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that's how that's going.
You want to tell us kind of why you became a counselor, or what led you to doing this work?
I really don't know.
That's all right.
I feel like I've always just been drawn to the realm of counseling, realm of psychology.
Did you know you wanted to do this when you came on as personal assistant?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I graduated from tech with a sociology degree in
That's right.
hopes of doing an MSW. But then I got the personal assistant job, started being here, and I liked this, I guess, side of it more.
Uh-huh.
And so then I was like, I think I'm going to do a counseling master's instead of social work.
Awesome.
So I think I've just always been drawn to it.
Yeah.
Nothing necessarily was like, you got to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you got the personality for it.
So
Okay, so what is the Enneagram? Who wants to start on that? Like, tell us what it is and...
I feel like you can describe it more.
Sure. It's a personality test.
Yeah.
Like, and the simplest way to say it is a way to pinpoint your personality. And there are 9 types. And within each type, there are 3 subtypes. So it maxes out at 27. No more, no less. And as we kind of go through each number, as we get to that point, we'll kind of talk about each one and maybe some subtypes and other things. But I find it to be a very useful tool. And I keep that in mind. It's not always, it doesn't define who we are, because if me is an 8, if I just stop there and I put myself in a box and I'm only an 8, I might as well not know anything about the Enneagram, because that's not the point. So, and it's wonderful for relationships. I use it with a lot of my couples, even whenever they don't specifically ask about the Enneagram. The more I sit with them, the more I become aware of what type they are. They don't have to take a test for me to sit with them for a few sessions, and you can pretty much pinpoint what type they are.
Yeah, I think people would think, oh, that's super judgmental. And so what I want to remind people is that, especially as counselors or Christians or doing the Enneagram, judgment means we're weighing your value and worth based on the number, right? But this is more about understanding who you are, how healthy you are, and what your history and your past has brought into the present, and what we're dealing with. It's not a value-laden test. It's not like, oh, you're an 8, so you're better or worse than this person, or you're a 3, so you're better or worse than this person. And I think that's where people's pushback sometimes is like, what do you mean you knew who I was when you were around me? And it's like, well, I wasn't saying you were less or more. I was saying you fit in this category.
Sure.
And then as we get to know each other, that'll make more or less sense depending on how healthy or unhealthy you are.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because I've had couples do maybe some research or have some limited knowledge of the Enneagram, and they look and find out, well, our numbers aren't compatible. A 1 and a 7 or a 3 and a 6. And all 9 numbers, none of which are better than another. They're just 9 different lenses on the world. When they're unhealthy, they're going to be difficult to be in healthy relationships with.
Yeah.
Unhealthy, any number is not going to be able to be, they're not going to be as good of a partner or a friend as someone who is working on their health. So
Good.
the levels of health makes a huge difference no matter what number you are.
Yeah. Natalee, what do you think? What's the Enneagram to you? I mean, how's it been helpful, or what do you see it as other than what Andy said?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just been something to honestly tell me the worst parts of myself, to where and then I would look back on my life and be like, oh, dang, that really is true for me. And so then I was able to, I guess, recognize the patterns that I had whenever I was not doing well. So as a 1, I go to a 4 in unhealth. So I would always have these patterns of like melancholy, depression, just kind of like very unlike my 1 self.
Yeah.
Whenever I wasn't doing well. And so realizing that, and then just, yeah, I guess just the patterns of it over the course of my life and how I can grow from that.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
More of a growth tool, I guess.
What are some maybe fears, or I mean, I've heard some of them. You know, like I read some blog about how Enneagram was like anti-Christian, and you know, this whole long thing about where it comes from and all these things. And so, what would you say to like the myths and fears, or what are some things maybe you've heard or?
Yeah, I think for me, people are scared of it because of how accurate it can be.
Yeah.
It kind of pokes at some of those insecurities and areas that we need to improve on. But with the Enneagram in church, sometimes it can be kind of taboo. You know, some people are really against it because they think it puts you in a box, and I don't believe that to be the case. But it's,
Would you think those same people were probably against mental health in general and therapy and?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. I do think most people's fear is that they are going to be put in a box. I feel like that's what everyone says whenever I'm like, you should do the Enneagram. They're like, I don't want to be put in a box.
Right.
Like, you're not being put in a box. You get like, you have all these different numbers, and it really breaks down. It's not saying that you have to be this certain type of person. It's just a tool of, I think people get really freaked out though whenever they're like, I have to be this one thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people obviously have a lot of family systems trauma. I mean, the reason they need the Enneagram is the same reason they want to avoid it, right? It's like you don't want to feel controlled or judged, or there's be presuppositions about you, and then that be used against you. And I think, like every tool in life, people can use those tools poorly, or they can use them in an appropriate way. And most people just haven't experienced tools being used in a helpful way. Even the church, it's like, well, we're going to do this personality test, and then we're going to find out where you fit, or we're going to do this spiritual giftings, and then we're going to tell you where you fit. And you know, unhealthy people have done that very poorly, and so people's are a little gun shy to you know, being told what they are. I think the other problem with it is, like you said, Andy, it's not about identity though. Right? Our identity is in Christ, right? And who He is and who He says we are. This is just helping us to see how our family and how our biology and how our makeup and our giftings have shaped us to kind of fit more this than others, and then go, don't stay there.
Yeah. And as I was kind of looking at that painting behind you, I was just out of my peripheral vision, I thought it was a map for a second, but that reminded me that Dr. Tom LaHue, I'll refer to him several times on the podcast because he was my teacher in my Enneagram certification course, is that, you know, when you're going on a trip, and no one uses maps anymore, everyone's got smartphones, but for illustration purposes, you have a starting point. You always, like, where you're starting from is the equivalent to your number. I start my day as an 8. Now, depending on where I go, that was my starting point, but it's not going to keep me from anything. The point is to grow from it. My goal is an 8, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or any Enneagram type, is to get as far away from that type as possible and embrace the other 8 types for a better understanding of my relationships and people. There's a book, I cannot remember the author, but he actually, it's called The Enneagram Goes to Church, and I'm about halfway through it now. And man, it's really good stuff, because what he talks about, because I think one of the prep questions was, can Christians use it? And I mean, absolutely, I think we can. We shouldn't depend on it, but it's a good tool. But he talks about all truth being God's truth. So if someone is an atheist or from another religion, if they say something and it's true, does it make it any less true because it didn't come from a Christian? No. If it's true, it's true. So whether someone is a follower of Jesus or not, if you look at the Enneagram, because there's plenty of non-Christians who use it, and I think it can still be helpful for them as well. But it's something just to be mindful of, that the truth of my behaviors is an 8. I had those behaviors before I surrendered my life to Jesus. Now, I tell people now who mistake me for a 9 or a 2 that I'm an 8 with Jesus, because he has helped me in my growth more than anybody. So, yeah, the church can definitely be funny about it, but I think it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah. You got anything, Natalie? Any fears or reactions that people have?
The only other thing I can think of is that I've heard a lot of people say that the Enneagram is the Christian, what are those things called?
Mandala?
No. Based off of your birthday?
Horoscope?
Horoscope,
Yeah.
yes. So they say it's like the Christian horoscope because people just get so into it, and I start to identify with it, and they'll say like, oh, well, I'm a 1, so that's why I do this. And, just like someone would be like, oh, she's a Gemini.
Right.
So, yeah, so people.
Is that what you are?
A Gemini?
Yeah.
No, I think I'm a Cancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, so I think people will say that it's like a Christian horoscope.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what the John Chris, skit is. He's like, well, I'm a 3, and so I just don't do that. He's like, get out of here, that's not how it works.
Right. So, which is obviously not true.
Right. But yeah, I get it. And like I said, people use tools the wrong way all the time, and then we throw the tool out. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't, try to eat ice cream with a shovel. It might not work.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Can Christians use it? I guess we talked about that. What are some examples of how it helps? And, what have y'all seen in your work? Natalie, we'll start with you. How have you seen it help in counseling and in your life? And you said earlier, and I would say the same thing, knowing what I wing to in unhealth helps me to go, oh, I'm totally being an 8, I'm being really direct.
Right. I think the biggest thing, which Andy has said, is relationships is a huge thing that can benefit from just utilizing the Enneagram, marriages, friends. I've definitely learned more about my friends and how to talk to them, because sometimes people, and this is just a, I guess, healthy person thing also, but sometimes you'll say something to someone and then they respond like offended almost, and then you don't understand why. But, sometimes knowing their Enneagram or knowing their wound, their childhood wound, or their wings, or whatever it is, can help you to respond to them differently, ask for things differently in a way that you might not have before.
That's good.
It can also, if you're close enough with the person, help you to maybe guide them if they're not doing so well. Like a gentle, hey, I've noticed you're kind of doing some of these traits that you tend to do whenever you're unhealthy. Do you want to talk about it? That's just been something in the office and in real life that the Enneagram's helped me with as far as just relationships, marriage, all of that.
Awesome.
And then the awareness, like I said earlier, of just yourself and if you're being healthy or not.
Yeah, I think once we get in a minute, I want to hear from you, but I think once we get what the numbers are, I think then we can give even more details. So how do you same way?
Absolutely. Especially with couples who come in with communication issues.
Yes.
If you have 1 or a 7, and I know we're going to get to the numbers, those can be difficult couples to work with. And people understand why as we kind of go through them, and if they, take notes or listen to it, it'll help them understand. But get in to see that, Michelle, my wife, who's a 2, my world is tainted by my 8 lenses. But if I can understand where she's coming from as a 2, it gives me the ability to be like, okay, she's not just this is her personality. And it's not about, again, I'll probably say it many times, about not being put in a box, but man, understanding our own type is the most important, because that's how I interact with the world. So as an 8, I can be very direct and really just rude sometimes, and that's not my intent. But knowing that about myself, it's helped me understand, okay, maybe I need to dial it back down a little bit, as opposed to just being 100 all the time. So, but it's wonderful, especially in parenting. I want to hit on that in a little bit, how important it is to maybe take advantage of the tools that we have, because it's helped me understand my son so much better, knowing what type he is. And he didn't have to take a test. His behavior has told me he's a 7.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, it reminds me of the love languages. Like people don't give as much pushback about that, about being controlling or put in a box, but man, it's spot on. If you're talking about personal, physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and what's the other one?
Gifts.
Yeah. See, that's not mine, so I don't think about it. But that's the same way, right? You tend to love people in the way that you want to be loved. And a lot of times when you don't understand, you don't have insight in what Scripture would call wisdom, then you don't know yourself, then you assume and project on everybody that the reason they're doing what they're doing is how you do it, or what you would want. And so then you just treat everybody in this narcissistic way, and then you're surprised when they don't like it.
Right.
Or you keep buying them stuff, and you're like, "What? I showed you I loved you. I bought you these things." And they're like, "I don't care about this at all."
Yep.
Like, you haven't touched me in 6 weeks, or whatever the thing is. So it's interesting, as we're talking about, like, people don't give that much pushback to the 5 love languages, though, as much as they do to this, and they're kind of the same thing. And maybe that's because people have used the Enneagram more inappropriately than they have maybe the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Yes, and using it to type people is something you should never do.
Right.
Like saying, well, you're this, and that's a bad thing.
Right, because that's identifying you as the number.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's good.
Which I also think people may have just gotten annoyed by it. I know.
Oh, yeah.
Personally, because I'm a young adult, it hit the young adult world
By storm.
Yeah, by storm. Everyone was talking about it for years.
Yeah.
It has slowed down recently, but it was like everybody wanted to talk about in church, and so.
Well, I think that's what's
Enneagram
annoying.
Small groups and podcasts and books, and there's all this stuff going on, and I think people just got so over it. They just didn't want to use it.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that probably has a lot to do with not knowing where to go once you know your number. Because if we just sit around as a 2, a 1, and an 8, what good's that going to do us? Because then it's like, what is the tool? How do we use this thing? How do we use it for growth? And the majority of people that I talk with or encounter, they stop at their number, and that's all they focus on, and they wonder, why am I not getting any better?
Yeah.
Well, it's because
I'm
you
aware
have to
now.
put in the work, just
Right.
like therapy. Because learning about your Enneagram type, if you're someone who is against counseling or haven't been to a place in your life where you realize, hey, I need to go talk to somebody, the Enneagram type can kind of give you a little bit of counseling in and of itself.
It's good. Yeah, Natalie, I think you're spot on. Where I know there was a season where I was like, I don't even want to learn about this because it's so annoying hearing about it, and that's with everything.
Right.
I think a lot of Christians who are following Christ and following the way and who are really sold out for Jesus, it's like, well, you don't even read your Bible, but you're gonna read 4 books on the Enneagram.
Right.
Right. So that's where I think the problem becomes. I would love to know, if people are solid in their identity in Christ and in the Word and in that truth, right? Just like everything, the Enneagram can be a supportive role to that, if that's the foundation.
Absolutely.
But anything is going to be a problem if you're a Christian anyway, and you're not foundationally
Right.
centering yourself on Jesus.
Yeah, if you know your spiritual gifts, but you don't use them for Jesus, what good are they to you? Then you're using them for selfish gain, and then that defeats the whole purpose of them being your spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
That's
And I
good.
think we'll get to this later, but one of the parts of the Enneagram, I guess, that kind of even had me had a bad taste in my mouth about the Enneagram is that a lot of people kind of like what you're saying. They would learn about themselves and then they would just stop there. But then also they would blame their bad habits or like unhealthy traits on the Enneagram and be like, well, I'm just an 8, so like I just do that.
Yeah.
And then they would just stop. They would not try to grow from it. They would blame the Enneagram because of what they were doing. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It's my least favorite comment from anybody is when like, well, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness. So that's why my least favorite phrase is it is what it is. I can't stand when people say that because it's like, no, nothing is stuck.
Right.
It is what it is, just a cop out to, I can't do anything about it. It was destined to happen, and it's like, no, everything isn't just what it is. It happened for a reason. There are things that can change, and we have hope in things being different. So yeah, people are like, well, I'm just an 8, and so I'm going to be a jerk. Like that's how I was born. It just
No
obviously
offense,
like,
Andy.
yeah, no offense, Andy.
I was a jerk for a long time.
No, but I mean, or but that, again, that we'll get into that in a second. But it's like, it's no judgment of those people. I was those people. All of us in our unhealth don't want to change and are like,
Right.
I guess I'm just going to be a person who leaves my, trash in the back of my truck for 6 weeks.
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But, in the past, I've been really unhealthy in my wings. And I look back on that. And at the time, I would have been like, well, that's just my personality. I'm not going to be able to do anything about that.
Right.
And as you mature and grow, you realize like, well, maybe like have you ever heard of the Strengthsfinder?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. I love the idea that, there are going to be some things you're never going to be excellent at.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So find the things you can be excellent at and be excellent at it. Do the best you can to bring the other things up. But if you spend all your time trying to be excellent at something that's not your gifting, no matter what, you're not going to thrive in that area.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you go, well, then I'm just going to stink it up in this area. You want to do the best you can.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. And, my is what it is when people say, if they can't accept me for who I am, then I don't want anything to do with them. Especially with couples. Well, she knew this when she married me. She knew what she was getting into. And I'm like, well, maybe, we are always changing. Maybe you're not as awesome as you think you are, because we all have room for growth. Every single human.
Or maybe when you get married, you know that, but you don't know how that's going to play out in 1,000 different ways for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially once kids start coming.
Yeah.
That's where some conflict comes from.
Yeah, it's the same thing with parents when they say, we have these 3 kids and we parented them all the same and they just turned out so differently. And you're like, no, you didn't.
Right.
There's no way you did. You have that second kid, you're like, you're fine.
Yep.
Like you parent totally different because you're a different person. You grow and you change and you evolve and, for the better or the worse.
Yes.
So yeah, I get that. It's funny. Okay, so let's talk about the numbers. You want to take like the first? How do y'all? I don't know how you want to do it, but you take the first half, Natalie.
Sure. Do they split? They don't split evenly, do they?
Yeah, 1 through 5. Let's give you 5.
Okay, I'll do 9 through 4.
Okay, go backwards. It's gonna really tweak us up.
Oh, 1 through 5. Okay, I'll do 1 through 5.
Okay.
So 1. Well, the names have changed over the course of some years. So if I say a name that you don't identify with, it is still it's still your name.
I don't know, so you're fine. I'm about to learn a lot.
Yeah, so 1 is the perfectionist.
Gotcha.
Previously.
Yeah.
Now it's the reformer.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, I like that name more.
The reformer.
Yeah, so I'm a 1, very black and white people, right? Like wrong, right, no
logical.
No in between. Stresses me out to think about gray areas kind of thing. Very task oriented, detail oriented. I'll like point things out in rooms and be like, that is not even, and other people be like, I would have never noticed that. So just very, details, tasks, black and white. Perfectionist, kind of your picture perfect perfectionist. And they sometimes get confused with 3s in a strange way, just because they have sort of the same like outer shell, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
3s aren't as like black and white, but they're still like very go-getter, task-oriented
yeah.
people. So
yeah, I was talking with somebody, my friend Tyler, the other day, and because we were talking about details, and we had a bunch of people working on something. I was like, we're gonna have to pull a detail-oriented person into this, and he was like, no, I'm super detail-oriented, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know enough about it to know that a 3 was.
Yeah, they are.
But it made sense.
So, and then also they're always trying to be better, I guess.
Like in growth?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a way of like you always feel like there's more I could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're never good enough.
That makes sense.
Which I feel like we all feel that way. But I guess it's
I don't
different.
know. Do ones feel that way?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Ones are the ones who are always like, I didn't do enough.
Oh, okay.
With the ones, talking about wanting to be better, unhealthy ones have a tendency to want to be right.
That's what I was thinking.
It's not about being better. It's about being right. And I made some notes because ones, I think, like I said earlier, all numbers when they're extremely unhealthy can be difficult to be around. But like the basic fear, they have a fear of being bad, corrupt, or defective.
Yeah.
And then the childhood message. When I first started listening to the Enneagram and starting to research and understand it, I didn't put too much stock in the childhood message.
I love the
but
childhood
some
message.
of them are like spot on, and the childhood message for a 1 is it's not okay to make mistakes.
It reminds me of when we do the trauma egg. I don't know if you have you done that with CSAT stuff?
Yeah.
Or you can do it in general, but you do your family motto, and that probably hits probably pretty true.
Yeah. And then very critical of themselves and others. And like Natalee was saying, the black and white thinking. And a friend of mine, we had dinner a while back, and he's a 1. And we were talking, and he said that he had been listening to a podcast, and he heard about a 1 that he said, as a 1, I don't look for mistakes. Mistakes assault me. And it made so much sense.
Yeah.
Like the ones in my life, like they can walk into a room and notice everything that's wrong when they're unhealthy and not the things that are right in the room.
Yeah. Which is something so interesting because once I found out about the Enneagram, growing up my whole life, I was always judgmental. I don't know why I used air quotes. I was judgmental. I was super judgmental, and I never knew like why every time I met someone, I just ridicule, like found out.
The list.
Yes, everything that they, even whenever I had like teachers in school and a piece of their hair would be messed up, the whole class period I'd be like, I need to fix that piece of hair.
Right.
I would just always be so judgy and critical, and I had no idea why I was that way. And then whenever I found out about the Enneagram, I was like, oh my God, I've been a 1 my whole life. This is crazy. So, yeah.
And then making that, having that mindset that being good equals being loved.
Yeah, and that's something with as far as, I feel like we all have that one thing for Christians that you struggle with. And I think the grace is like the hardest thing for a 1 to like understand because you're saved by grace, not by what you do. And so we're like, what?
You're like, no, I want to earn this.
No, I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to check all the boxes, and that's when I'm going to go to heaven, and I'm going to be saved. So I think the grace piece, if you want to like wrap it into being a Christian, also is like the hardest thing for a 1. So.
And there's a lot of anger and resentment in 1s. They have a difficult time letting it go.
Yeah.
They're stamp collectors. They are going to keep a record of everything that you've done wrong. And then the healthier they get, the more they realize, I do wrong too. I'm not perfect.
And then me and my husband are both 1s. And so, that's awesome.
Isn't JC a 1?
Yeah. Yeah, JC's a 1 wing 2. Yeah.
I'll like do the dishwasher, and then he'll like redo the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you redid the dishwasher.
You're like, that's not the right way to do that. Yeah, there's a lot of right ways to do that in my life. It's gotten better in 12 years of marriage, but yeah, I've learned that if it doesn't matter, you know, then it's not, if it makes her feel safe and secure and comfortable, then like the dishwasher, that was our biggest, not our biggest, but one of our fights in the beginning of marriage was, I'm like, listen, I put the effort into doing the dishwasher because I love you and I care about you. And she's like, it doesn't matter if it's not right.
If you don't put the forks, the big forks with the big forks, the small forks with the small forks, and the spoons with the spoons, and you don't put them in like what goes in your mouth side down, it's wrong. Yeah. Like the point of the dishwasher is to get the dishes clean. Yeah. It doesn't matter how they go into the dishwasher.
Oh, it does do a one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my wife, she has, and we're fixing to go into twos, but she's a heavy wing one. Oh, yeah. So like when she's putting the drinks in the refrigerator, the Coke Zeros go with the Coke Zeros, the red Gatorades with the red Gatorades, Dasani with Dasani. And so just to mess with her, sometimes I'll just scramble it all up, and then she'll fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such an 8 thing to do.
It is.
Yeah, you're wrong for that.
Yes. Yeah. She's gotten a lot better because her being a 2, her counselor is a 1, and that helped her so much as far as going to see a counselor who was her dominant wing, but helped her see it from a different perspective, a healthier perspective.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
All right, 2.
So the 2 is the helper. Mm-hmm. You're a 2.
Yep.
So 2s.
And I wing 3.
Wing 3.
I don't have very much 1 in me. I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on that.
Yeah.
Their attention goes to the wants and needs of others, and they're just those like servant people that you just kind of see. I feel like everybody wants to be a 2 if they're a Christian because well, I want to be like up at 5 a.m. doing the coffee for the church. It's like your grandma or something, like always helping, serving. But that's good, right? But then I'm sure you can attest to like you do it so much, then it's like, why am I doing this anymore? Am I even doing it for the right reasons? Like there's a whole other side to it.
Yeah, definitely. You want to read some of the course? I'll talk to that in a second. But
yeah. Like the basic fear of a 2 is being unworthy of being loved, being unworthy of being loved. Childhood message: it's not okay to have your own needs. Basic desire is to be loved, and the deterioration is the feeling that they have to be needed. Yeah,
I mean, I definitely have transitioned through that too. I mean, I've been in therapy for 20 years, and so yeah, I'm like you, Natalee. I always, looking back on it, I'm like, I've always been a 2. Part of that's my family system and coming from divorce and being the oldest and feeling like, but the other way is like, that's how I got loved. You know, as I took care of people, I made sure people weren't arguing. I made sure people weren't fighting. And then people were like, oh, you're really good at this. And then that became in high school, it was the same thing. And people would come to me with advice, and I'm like, I'm not even dating anybody, but I'm giving people advice because it made me feel needed, you know, made me feel wanted. And then military, same thing. People were coming to me. But that was really exhausting. And then I wasn't doing it because I wanted to do it. I was doing it because I felt like I had to and out of obligation. And I was more concerned about them feeling loved and supported than I was about myself. And then that gets super unhealthy.
And I think boundaries is a big 2. And, I mean, pretty much everybody has boundary issues. Right. But the crazy thing about, like, going from a 1 to a 2, 1s have, like, very rigid boundaries. Like, they're like, I'm not doing this. I'm in bed by 7 p.m. You know, you're very structured. And then a 2 is like
has more diffuse boundaries.
Boundaries. And so it's so interesting that you can be a 1-wing 2 or a 2-wing 1 when some things are so opposite.
Yeah. And you know, if you know someone who's a 2, or as you listen to this, you're like, oh, I think my mom or my sister or my sister-in-law may be a 2. Like, one of the worst things. Your
boss.
Yeah, or my boss. One of the things, you know, or one of the worst things you can do to a 2 is like, if you go to their house and they like offer you something, you know, is to say no thanks. You know, because when we have people over to the house, like if it were up to Michelle, she would like chew the cookies for them and then spit them in the mouth like a mama bird. You know, and our friends who come over are like, I'm good. You know, like when Ross and Jen come over and Michelle's like, let me do this for you. You know, she's like wanting to wipe people's butts. And like, it's like, will you just leave us alone?
She tries to wipe Ross's butt. And
she would.
Of
course.
God.
Like, if he was like, Michelle, I need you. She'd just go in there, you know, no glove or nothing. But like, she has this desire to serve. And it has taken its toll on her, especially like with serving in the church and where we go now at River Park. Like, our pastors are very good about, like, they make you take a break. Like, you don't have the option to serve every Sunday.
Yeah.
Because your 2s are the ones that they will do anything.
Fill it up.
And if you go look at the sign up list for any event anywhere, the top few people are going to probably be 2s.
Yep.
Because other numbers aren't really ready to sign up for something. You know, you're not going to catch many 5s on there.
Yeah.
So,
No.
What I realized the last, especially, 2 years and doing the equine therapy is, I realize I have no clue how to ask for what I need, and being, y'all's boss and working with this big system, I realized, like, I'm going to have to learn how to do that pretty quickly, because this thing doesn't run if it's not running healthy from the top. And so doing that work and being like, okay, it's okay for me to say, Andy, I need you to do this video, or, hey, Natalee, I need you to turn this in on time. But, like, if you feel bad about that, then I would spiral, because I'm like, I have to say this in a way that you're going to feel good about it, and I'm going to ask for what I need. And you can't do that. No. And so, I remember trying to resolve conflict in high school and with parents and different things. I'm like, okay, I need to write this letter so they feel as loved and amazing as I believe they are, but I also need to say you've hurt me.
Yeah.
And, like, the conflict there has been intense. And so, yeah, getting to a place where you're like, no, I'm going to be my authentic self. I'm going to ask for what I need, and then I'm going to stop there and let you meet that need or not, and then we'll reevaluate that. Yeah. And you don't have to feel good about it.
Sure.
That's okay,
Yeah. And Natalee brought up boundaries. All of us, no matter what type you are, what subtype you are, like, we all need healthy boundaries. But 2s, when I'm working with them in sessions, is I will get them to, lightheartedly say, all right, say the word no. And they'll be like, no. And I'm like, okay, say it 10 more times. No. I was like, okay, so you do have the ability to say it. You just choose not to. Because 2s will overcommit.
Right.
They will neglect themselves, to me, more than any other number, to be able to take care of others until they crash. It's because they don't want to say no. They want to be a part of just about everything.
Oh, yeah. Every time anybody invited me to anything, I'm like, absolutely there.
Yep.
Knowing I wasn't going. And that caused so much anxiety, because then no matter what, you feel like a disappointment.
Yeah.
And now, I love it. I'm like, no, we're not going to be able to do that. That's a Sunday or a Saturday morning or whatever. Like, absolutely not.
Yeah. As an 8, I love telling people no. Like, I enjoy it. Like,
you need to say yes more.
Yes, I need my counselor to be like, say yes, say it 10 times.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, 3.
So 3 is the achiever, performer. These are like social climbers.
Right.
Like, want to be on the top. Their focus is to gain approval, successful. And they don't really, sometimes if they're unhealthy, they don't really care what it takes to do that. So they will break rules, which is where the 1s and the 3s split, because 1s don't break rules. 3s will break rules, manipulate to get to the top. And that's only unhealthy 3s. So if you're 3, don't you can, get to the top without doing those things.
If you're a 3 and you're super offended by listening to this, you might need to do some work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if anybody's listening to this and their number comes up and they're like, oh my God, that's not me, then maybe you should, like, stop and, like, check on yourself, because if you're that easily offended by talking about it, we might have some things to work on.
My brother's a 3, and they're very much chameleons as well. Like, you'll see them walk into a room and they will instantly mesh with someone.
Yeah.
They're going to find somebody to blend in with, connect with immediately.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm a 2-wing 3, so that all fits.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to do the practice. I want it to go. I want it to be successful. In a healthy way, it can be about you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've found that 3s are very charming. Like, they're the people that almost attract everybody's attention. Like, everybody is watching them. They want to be their friend. Like, they're very charming people. And so,
yeah, it can get messed up, twisted up real quick.
Hopefully my brother's not getting a big head by me saying
That's right.
that. Yeah. But they're like the people that you want to be friends with. They're very successful, want approval, all of that stuff.
Well, it just means
task
you love
oriented.
your brother, right?
Yeah, I love my brother. He's great.
Yeah. And, like, the basic fear of a 3 is being worthless or without inherent value. The childhood message, it's not okay to have your own feelings and identity. The basic desire is to be valuable, and the deterioration is chasing after success. And the message for them to hear is you are loved for yourself. because threes, when they're unhealthy, they care so much about what other people think, which is where wings will come into play later, because the 4 wing would say, why do you care what they think?
Right.
We're all right just the way we are. Something's messed up with them, not you.
I love a 4.
That's what a 4 is thinking.
Shout out to Uriah.
Yeah, I love Uriah. He's probably my favorite 4. But threes care about what they drive. They want to be seen as successful. They care about what they wear. Most of your threes are going to be in some designer clothes, and because they find their identity in those types of things. Love and approval are rewards for achievements and success. I made that note. Is the more I do, the more they're going to love me.
Feel that?
Yeah. So
It's
3.
rough being a 2-3. See, like people think you want to, they want to be the 2 and be super nice and be servant, and they want to have the big picture ideas and all that kind of stuff. But it comes at a great cost when you're unhealthy until you get healthy. I mean, because if you think about both those core messages, it's all about you not feeling loved and worthy.
Right.
So it's like, if you're not doing that in a healthy way, you're serving everybody else from emptiness.
Yes. And speaking of emptiness, that Dr. Tom.
I thought you were going to talk about my truck.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about that when we get to wings.
Okay.
But Dr. Tom was talking about threes, when unhealthy, are like the Easter bunnies on Easter, that like the big ones to where they're smiling on the outside, but you can like break it and it's hollow on the inside.
Yeah.
Like they're not fulfilled because all they care about is their outside appearance.
Yes.
So unhealthy threes, again, like every number, unhealthy can be challenging, but they are a force to be reckoned with.
They really are. One of my best friends, we've been friends since 2nd grade, I think, and she's a 3, and it almost like breaks my heart for her because she gets so stuck. She's way healthier now, but our whole lives she would be so stuck in this appearance-based like issue, and she would be so sad on the inside and broken and insecure, but on the outside she's
Smiling.
so happy, perfect girl, cheerleader, everything that you would want to be. So yeah, 3s are complex.
Yeah, I think with 3s you see, and I don't know if this is true, but you have the celebrity who's out there everywhere, and then suicide happens, and you're like, how? They were always smiling, they were always the joke and life of the party, and it's like a lot of times that that real unhealthy external shell looks good, but nobody's really spent any time with them intimately to know that there's stuff going on.
Or they're not letting people in.
Well, absolutely, because they don't want to feel unworthy or unloved.
Right.
Sure. And before we get too far down the list, I just now thought about this as we're going through, because here we have represented Natalee as a 1. You're a 2. As far as staff goes, because people have the option to go back and watch podcasts and see how the clinicians interact in that topic. Kelsey is our 3 here on staff. And we don't get hired by that, by the way. Like Clint doesn't say, what's your Enneagram number?
Right.
But
I am thinking it.
I found it hard to believe that she was a 3, because she is probably one of the healthiest 3s that I've ever known.
Yeah.
But I'm also comparing her to the unhealthy 3s that have caused me trauma in my life.
We'll give her some credit, but not.
Yes.
No, for sure. I mean, I do love that about our staff is, that's one of the things that, I really try to push us all to be healthy, take breaks, know ourselves, have insight, be authentic in the room, not try to be something you're not. And I think we have an amazing staff with that. So yeah, Kelsey is a good, amazing 3.
Yeah. And then
we've got 4.
4s, yeah.
So,
is anybody else a 3? I mean, I wing 3 really hard, but
I think Tyler's a 3. Shock.
Oh yeah. No, I think he's a 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's a 1.
I feel like we have a lot of 1s, 2s, 3s.
Yeah, we got a few.
I remember in the group
And then
message
the other ones are...
when someone had alphabetized the documents we send out, like Tyler specifically thanked them in the group message. Thank you for whoever did that. It was killing me.
Oh yeah, we did a staff. I went over to Russ and we did like a little staff retreat, and I had everything like in order, and I checked things off as we went, and I was like, I did this for you, buddy, and I can do it now because I have worked on my oneness.
And I think we got Tammy. She's a 2. Meredith is a 2. Hannah is a 2 as well.
Lots of 2s. Miss Linda's a 2.
Yep. So he's got a bunch of servants around here, and you can tell because they struggle with the boundaries, of what
They're like, I'm fine. Their legs like laying on the floor, their blood pouring out. They're like, no, this is good. Can I help you with anything?
Yeah.
And then Lanita's a 1.
Yeah.
She's so fun to do joint sessions with because she is.
Love Lanita.
She's on it.
Yeah, she's healthy too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really nice to know the numbers and see our therapist and know they're really healthy and to see it in a really good way. You're seeing the optimal. Not that any of us are perfect, but we are held to the standard to be, like you said, Natalie. Like like I said in staff meeting Monday, if you see anybody getting unhealthy or out of line, like lovingly, we should be talking about that and discipling one another and holding that accountable and going, hey, I love you. That's not who you are. This is not your most congruent self. So let's work on that. And vice versa, right? With y'all, if y'all see me I tell y'all that all the time. You see me doing something stupid or posting something that's not consistent or doing too much, call me out lovingly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm loved and worthy, though.
So next we have 4s. 4s are the individualist.
Yes.
Do they have a new name yet? No.
I don't think they do.
That's what I know them as.
The unicorns.
Oh Lord, yeah. So
they think they're so special.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about 4s?
They are special.
You're really good friends with Uriah, so
Yes, I have several good friends that are 4s, and Uriah, he's one of our therapists, and he works in the Bossier office. But just they do their own thing. They march to the beat of their own drum.
Very unique.
When I first started working here, there was a walking path around back.
That
you remember
drove
that?
me crazy.
With the stones, and like everyone would take the walking path, and then there was a path that had been worn down like a dog on a run.
Yeah.
That you could just see the dead grass.
In the grass next to those stones.
Yeah, and they were like Uriah's exact shoe prints.
Yes.
Because he just did his own thing.
So true.
And wasn't worried about it. Uriah, going in and leaving the toilet seat up.
Oh man.
He's not thinking about like, okay, there's 5 dudes and 20 women. Let's put this seat now. He's in his own world, like not doing it for with malice.
He's great. There's no
He's the healthiest 4 that I know.
Yeah.
But just most of your 4s are artists, musicians. A lot of Uriah's paintings are floating around the office and very kind of melancholy and just they're wonderful, man. 4s have taught me so much. My sister-in-law's a 4. I've learned so much from her. I mean, she's just carefree and she's like, who cares what they think? Like, just do you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of her motto on life. And
which again, I don't know why we're talking about 4s from such a healthy perspective, but I mean, it can be super tragic too. I mean,
I was gonna
not
say,
thinking about other people, not paying attention to how other people feel about you walking through the grass and leaving ruts and then having to resod the grass.
Yeah.
Like those things, not that that's what happened here, but
right.
Those are things that happen when you're not paying attention. When you're only worried about yourself, when you're only focused on what feels comfortable to you, that can really mess some things up because that's not really an authentic boundary. A real relationship takes both parties into account.
Yes.
And so you go, what's best for me, but what's also best for you, and let's figure that out in the middle. Where a 4 would be just like, I ain't even worried about what's best for you. I ain't even thought that you were even around here.
Right, that's what I was going to say from my, I guess, an unhealthy perspective of 4. They can be very exclusive, and they're sometimes hard to be friends with because they're so, you go to coffee with them, they talk all about like what's going on, and I've realized that they're very protective of their lives. Like they want everything to be almost aesthetically pleasing. They want to be, this painter who wears all black and like listens to music, and they're very protective of that world that they've created.
Themes. Yeah.
Yes, so they create these worlds around them, and then that's what keeps them safe.
That's a great, Natalie. Yeah.
And so if you like are going to interfere with their world, they're like, you don't go with my vibe. So you're going to have to go with yourself.
Like one of my,
and they wouldn't tell you that. They just move away.
Yeah.
They would just disappear completely.
Like one of my favorite things in staff meeting is when Uriah literally gets up and makes a cup of coffee in the middle of staff meeting.
In the middle of it.
Because he's like, I want a cup of coffee. And like, he just gets up and makes him a cup of coffee. The curator's like,
Right.
You know?
Also, on Uriah, one time he said,
Never
I don't
hated-
really know about any other Enneagram number. I just know about my 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was a very 4 thing for you to say,
Yeah.
sir.
Oh yeah, it's so funny.
It's all said with love, Uriah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, because he is healthy, and those things, because we're in relationship with him and we have intimacy with him, we like, what does it? And truthfully, what does it matter that he gets up and gets coffee? Like, I didn't even realize that he does that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me one bit. Probably because I'm a 2, and I'm like, oh, if that makes you happy, go do it.
Sure.
But honestly, I just don't pay attention to things like that. So it thinking about it this way for people who are listening, it's like, why are you bent up about that thing? Like, why can't they be different? Now, if it's problematic, if they really are causing a problem and they're really not worried about you, then, and that's in the relationship, then that's a conversation to be had. Like, if it really bothered me, then I would want to say authentically, hey, man, can you get that before staff meeting, or can you get it after? Or if it was like disturbing or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where it comes in of going, you got to know yourself so you know how you're interacting with other people instead of just typing them and being like, well, he gets up and that's really, like a 1 would probably see that as super rude.
Right. I was going to say, I think 4s are the people that I have the hardest time with.
Yeah.
Because, well, I think it's mostly because I go to that number in unhealth. And so,
Oh, it's
They
projection
are-
of your unhealth.
yes,
Yeah.
like almost triggering to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, and I get like very freaked out by, even though I act like that sometimes and whenever I'm not being healthy. So,
But even as an 8, like, I don't like injustice. So the unhealthy 8 would be like, well, we all got to sit here. What if I want a cup of coffee? I can't get up and get a cup of coffee. Like, you know, and then I'm
Although
sitting
you
there.
can.
Yes. Right. So yeah, it's
That's so funny.
so awesome to just think about.
But also, so to Uriah's credit, and all the other 4s out there, you know, like if it's, you know, like he's the same one that like the first few staff meetings, like just comes strolling in 10 minutes late and just sits down.
Yep.
Doesn't say nothing, you know, and then I said something to him about it. And the next, he hadn't been late since. And we were joking about that this weekend. You know, he's a healthy person. So when it's brought attention, like, hey, you're not putting the toilet seat down. Hey, you're doing this. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll fix it.
Yep.
yeah.
I'll start paying attention to you. It wasn't personal. It was just, this is my personality and I'm in La La Land and I'm thinking about whatever art thing I want to do tonight for 45 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh gosh, it's painful.
Yeah.
I think Jenna's a 4 as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah. How much? When we got like
We got another 35 minutes.
perfect. We're only on 4. We got a ways to go.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
all right.
Well, we still got to talk about wings, triads. We got a
Yeah,
lot
speed
to-
it up.
Yeah, so, okay, so 5s, observers, investigators, I feel like I don't know a lot of 5s because they're very recluse. They're not very social people. They like to jive out on their own time.
Sure.
They are usually trying to protect their own energy because they don't have much social energy.
And what was their name?
Investigator or
Oh, that's right, yeah.
observer.
Yeah.
So what are their basic fears?
Basic fear of being useless, incapable, or incompetent. Childhood message, it's not okay to be too comfortable in the world. The basic desire is to be competent. Message you need to hear is you are not a problem. You know, 5s, one of the things that because as an 8, when I'm under stress or in an unhealthy I go to a 5. 5s need to withdraw so that they can recharge. You know, they're like a cell phone. Like they're only going to give you so much before they literally need to detach and go be alone and recharge. You know, if a 5 is going to buy a lawnmower, they're going to watch, you know, an hour's worth of YouTube
Right.
reviews on what lawnmower is the best.
That's funny.
Yeah, because
Investigate, figure it
Yeah.
you know.
to them, knowledge is power.
Right.
Do 1s do that a little bit too, though?
I think so.
Because JC is the queen
Because-
of researching something before he buy it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
bro, it's the same thing.
There was
Yeah.
a season where I thought I was a 5 because I do the same thing, but that's another thing which I guess we can point out now is you can look like other numbers sometimes, and it's
'Cause
the
it's not a-
motivation behind why you're doing
Yeah,
that.
that's
So,
Yeah.
for a 1, I might do the right thing because I have this like extreme moral compass and I cannot help myself. Whereas a 3 is going to do the right thing because they want to be on top, or a 5 might do the right thing because they investigated it. So, I think that's another, I guess, thing that I like about the Enneagram because it makes it so specific is that you can look like other numbers, but it's like, why did you do that though?
Yeah, that's really good.
The biggest compliment that I have been paid is I had one of my colleagues think that I was a 2, because as an 8, when I'm at my healthiest, I go to a 2. So that's a compliment to me. So I like that. But yeah, 5s, you have to prove yourself to 5s. You know, they are the ones that want to walk in and see credentials on the wall. Not all of them, but most of them. You know, they want to know that you're qualified, that you have the knowledge to be able to help them. You know, they want practical application on what they can do. Not unlike a 1. You know, if you need me to do this, just tell me what you need done, and I'm going to get it done. Like, and I'm actually going to tell you how it could be done better.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So yeah, 5s, they're a treat. Yeah, I like some of the 5s that have come into my life. I've learned a lot from, you know, because as an 8, someone who shoots from the hip and says things before I actually think about them, the 5 that I go to and stress is telling me, Andy, you need more information here. Like, before that comes out of your mouth, you need to research and make sure you have all the facts. And I don't like that, because I just want to say what I got to say. And, you know, if you don't like it, tough. I mean, old Andy, BC Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah. BC.
That's funny.
So let me, so I think we're going to go, we've got 6, 7, 8, 9 left. So 6, that's the loyalist. Their basic fear is being without support or guidance. Childhood message is, it's not okay to trust yourself. The basic desire is to be secure. And the message you need to hear is you are safe. 6s can also be, they're unique because they are typically ruled by fear. You know, they are Chicken Little, the sky's falling. Another way that I've heard it is 6s, unhealthy 6s are 4 bad decisions away from homelessness at any given minute. You know, that if our dude's laughing over there because he's a 6, you know, because it's like, okay, well, if the kids go outside and they get a splinter and then the splinter gets infected and I don't clean it out, then the next thing you know, they're amputating their leg.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
like, no, they're not. We can take the splinter out. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
So they can.
We're laughing at Chip off the camera who's helping us with technology because he's a 6.
Yeah, I got him right in my line of sight. He's over there
Right.
chuckling because
And
he's.
1s and 6s are similar as well, but they say that a 6 has like a community of voices in their heads. So it's like, anything that they go to do, this one is saying, well, this could happen. The second one's saying, well, what about this? The third one's saying, what about this? You know, there's just this community of voices that's like, what if?
Yeah,
Yeah.
always. So yeah, 6s.
Right, which in a healthy way is amazing because they're able
Yeah.
to think about things that most of us would totally not even think about,
Right.
and
Sure.
we're off in the hole.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially like as we kind of transition into 7s. 7s are the enthusiast. 7s it's my less dominant wing, which we'll get to here in just a second. But 3 of my best friends are 7, and I feel like God did it.
As a joke.
Yes, as a joke. That's his magnifying glass to me is the 7s in my life, because they, as my less dominant wing, tend to give me the best advice. You know, 7s are like Peter Pan. You know, they are always wondering what's next. You know, their basic fears of being deprived or trapped in pain. They
really don't like to be.
They do not like to be set still.
Yeah, or uncomfortable or not having fun.
Right.
No, well,
It's
that is the
fun.
worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
It's not okay to depend on anyone for anything, is their childhood message. The basic desire is to be happy, and the message you need to hear, you will be taken care of.
Yeah.
Because my son, he's 13 and he's a 7. And the Enneagram has helped me so much, because I used to think that he was just ungrateful at times. But the way that I tell it is that I don't know if y'all know the candy stores where you go in and you pick out the candy you want and you like weigh it and you know however many pounds it is, or you know, well, only the bonds are getting pounds of candy.
That's
Most
right.
people are getting ounces. But the weight matters. So if I tell my son, you know, Drew, hey, you can get 10 pieces of candy, any candy you want. He's like, yes, sir, awesome. Well, as we're at the checkout and they're doing it and I'm paying for it, he can seem ungrateful and sad because he's not thinking about the 10 that he has. He's thinking about the 1,000 pieces he doesn't have.
Yeah.
Because with a 7, it's never enough.
Yeah.
You know, they always want more. Their sin is gluttony. And not always the way we think of it as far as more food.
Yeah.
It's just more
More of
anything.
anything materialistic.
Yeah,
kind
because
of.
trying to, Cassie and Brent, some friends of ours, all of us who are in here know them with the hub, and he's a very healthy 1 and she's a very healthy 7. But not too long ago, we were talking about planning a trip, and Brent, as the 1, was wanting to plan out the rest of 2021. And Cassie's like, what do you mean we're planning out the rest of 2021, man? This is like, she doesn't want to have to think that far in advance, because
It
then
ruins the fun.
Yes, if I make plans,
Right.
I have to do it. You know, I have to follow through. And I tell people, you know, guys who, everybody has probably seen Rocky at some point. You know, trying to catch a 7 is like Rocky trying to chase the chicken. You know, they're just all over the place, you know, and you're trying to get it, and man, all that chicken wants to do is be let back down
Right.
and run around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the, and really unhealthy 7s, one of the things that's frustrating is like they're the silver lining people.
Yes.
So like you're like, hey, how's your day? You know, or what's going on with this? Or they, you know, have a miscarriage, or they have whatever. And like, well, you know, God's just gonna make good out of it. And it's gonna be
Yeah.
great, and
Yeah.
you know, it's fine. And it's like, so I think 1s especially, but some of the numbers have a hard time connecting because it's like it feels inauthentic.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know anything about what you struggle with because nothing's a struggle because everything's a party and fun.
Right.
And
And I think 7s and 3s are similar in that, you know, facade aspect. But my sister-in-law is a 7, and she's my favorite person on the planet Earth, which is very interesting because most 7s really disrupt my structure.
Yes.
And so I get really stressed out around them, but I don't know, I guess maybe I feel so safe and comfortable with her. She can get me to do anything.
right, so that's the strength, right?
Which-
that's, yeah.
I guess because she's like that safe, comforting person, other people are trying to get me to do something, and I'm like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
What are you trying to get me to do? But since she's my sister-in-law, she can, you know, really be like, come on, loosen up a little bit, and like bring out a completely different side of me that is not normal. And I love that about her because that's the number I go to in health. And so she really pulls me towards that healthy aspect where I don't always have to be put together,
Yeah, that's
structured,
awesome.
sitting still
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
stuff.
That being my less dominant wing, you know, the 7s in my life, that they challenge me because they get me away from my 8 with my 9 wing. You know, they're like, come on, let's go do putt-putt, or let's go to a restaurant on a Friday night, and you know, there's 8 million people there, and that's the last thing I want to do. You know, the
Right.
thought of going to, you know, Chili's on a Friday night is my hell. You know, I don't want to do that. And my 7s are like, come on, let's go. You know, it's constantly, you know, what's next? You know, if you take a 7 to go play putt-putt, you know, on an 18-hole putt-putt course, on hole number 2, they seem sad because all they can think about is what are we doing after putt-putt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it drives my wife crazy because Drew, he's that way. You know, he's just, what's next? Where are we going? What are we doing?
Right, so being content in the moment's hard.
Yep.
It's there,
It
yeah.
is. Yeah, and then good old number 8.
Yeah, here we go.
You know, is the challenger.
I mean, you've talked about it most of the podcast already, but let's keep going.
Yes, let's go.
Oh my God.
So, basic fear of being harmed or controlled by others. Childhood message: it's not okay to be vulnerable or to trust anyone. Basic desire is to protect oneself. Deterioration is constant fighting, need to be against. And the message you need to hear is you will not be betrayed. So yeah, all of those I can say as an 8 are so true. I spent, I'm 37 now. I started going to counseling at 34 years old. So for the first 34 years, I was a very unhealthy 8. I lacked empathy, compassion. You know, it was kind of like if something happens, it's like, suck it up. Life happens. That's just the way it's going to be. And my wife being a 2, you know, there's a lot of times I was very harsh. You know, some of the things that I would say. And I heard this from a pastor a while back, and I don't even have to read the notes to remember it. It's And as an 8, if you're an 8 listening to this and you've never heard it, write it down, get it tattooed on your arm. It's very important. Everything that is said needs to be true, but everything that is true doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
And as an 8, I wore brutal honesty like a badge of honor. Like what I said was true, but the way in which I said it was so hurtful.
Yeah. We talked about this the other day. We were talking about Jesus speaking in grace and truth at the same time every time.
Yeah.
That it wasn't, we oscillate between the two in our culture of like 8 type personalities. Like, well, I said the truth.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how they felt. I mean, a 4 could be that way. It doesn't matter how they felt, But the reality is the balance of all this is like, well, hold on, you got to be graceful too, and maybe take the other person's experience into consideration. Think about who they are.
Sure. And, the worst thing you can do with an 8 is to control them, not unlike a 7, because 8s don't have to be in control. They just don't want to be controlled. And I'm that way. I don't have to lead, but I don't want to be micromanaged.
Yeah.
That's something that you do a wonderful job at not doing, is micromanaging. You address the issues that come up and need to, but and it all defaults back to the level of health of that number.
Yeah.
But 8s can be very, very harsh. If they say they're going to do it a certain way, they're going to do it that way, even if everyone tells them not to. Once they make their mind up, it is very difficult to change an unhealthy 8's mind. Mm-hmm. The 9, that's the peacemaker. Side note, 8, I don't think we have any other 8 counselors, and I don't believe we have any 5, 6, or 7s. But back to 9, the peacemaker, the fear of loss of connection.
No, Olivia is an 8 in Ruston.
Okay.
Yeah.
After watching that podcast, I can see that.
Yeah.
She's super healthy too. I think Mary Kate's a 2, wing 3.
Yeah.
And I think Rachel, our dietitian, I can't think what she is off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. And then so 9s, the basic fear is that loss of connection. The childhood message, it's not okay to assert yourself. Basic desires to be at peace. And the message needed to hear is your presence matters. Ross, who was actually my counselor for about 18 months, is a 9. 9s have the ability to see things from everyone's perspective when they're healthy. I mean, they can kind of step back. You always talk about like not talking in the hallway, and I just know why I can hear it.
Exactly.
I know who it was. But being able to, 9s are very unique in their ability to relate to everybody. Especially when they're healthy. When they're unhealthy, they can be very difficult, because I don't think there's any number that avoids conflict more than an unhealthy 9. And 2s aren't confrontational either.
Yeah, I was going to say 9s and 2s can kind of look alike.
Like 9s will just stop being your friend if they think there's going to be conflict. Unhealthy 9s.
Yeah.
So, and they want to keep the peace and...
Yeah, I guess that... I was going to go, well, that doesn't make sense because I don't mind conflict, but I guess that's because I'm healthier than I used to be.
Sure.
Because, in the past I would avoid it like the plague and not want anybody to feel bad, never tell anybody how I feel or ask for what I need. Mm-hmm. And I guess now I'm like, oh, no, we're talking about this, like, immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wing heavy on my 9, and I think that's just childhood.
Absolutely. What did you say that day about me texting you? We were talking about Enneagram.
Oh, whenever you had... trying to think when we talked about rescheduling it and we didn't know.
No, I'm talking about like you were saying winging. Like you're like, I know I'm gonna get a text from Clint when.
Oh yes, if I just text him, hey, can we talk?
Yeah.
Like if you want Clint to reach out to you, just text him, hey, can we talk? You're gonna get it, because my wife's that way. She's a 2, so if you text her and say that, it will, and then you don't immediately talk to her. She's picking up the phone to call you.
Yeah.
She wants to know what's going on.
It's similar with the 9, right? I mean,
Yes.
Ross and I talk about that all the time. We're like, hey, if we have a meeting, tell me what the meeting's about, and say, hey, there's not a problem. We're just meeting about this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Don't say, hey, I need to talk to you on Friday. Here's a meeting at 9:00. See you then.
Yep.
Because from Monday to Friday, we're going to be freaking out.
All
Right.
week long. Yes, and I know that drives her nuts. And then the other 2s in my life. Like, what do we need to talk about? And then if you just give her, she's a lot healthier now, just the subject. What does
That's what I mean, yeah.
pertain to? Yeah. Because, 9s can be that way. But 9s, they don't worry so much like Ross, for instance. If you were to text Ross or I was and say, hey, can we talk? And he sees that message, he's going to finish his game of Candy Crush before he actually does it. He cares, but a 2 is going to stop whatever they're doing and want to get this thing resolved.
Yeah. I love 9s.
Oh, man.
I mean, they really are like I think all my closest friends are 9s. I don't know. I think it has to be something juxtaposition of like how structured and like how everything has to be for me in my brain. And they're so chill. They can just be like, yeah, we can do that, like whenever you want. And because they're not like a 7 in the way that like they're like
hard to
do like yeah, we can do whenever we want, and then we can do this, and then we can do this. They're just more like relaxed about it.
You get to control it.
Yeah.
You're like, that's why it's a juxtaposition. You're like, oh, you truly don't care, so I can just decide for us.
You don't care, so that's awesome news for me.
Exactly.
So I love being around 9s because
so
I'm
true.
like, this is great. You don't care at all.
Yeah,
this is amazing.
Truthfully.
Yeah.
All of your friends that show up to the party late, most of them are probably 9s.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sarah,
100%.
You know, who works up in the front. She's wonderful. One of Natalee's good friends. But she's a 9, and she just moves at her own pace. I don't even know why she owns a watch. And not just her, most 9s. Like, there's not that sense of urgency.
No, they are just cruising at their own.
Yeah. Well, and Sarah's now my personal assistant, and so, you know, she's also the person who's not going to tell you if there's a problem. You know?
Right.
And she's grown in that with me. I mean, she trusts me, so she tells me all the time. But, yeah, it's like, I'm like, all right, is everything going okay? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, your face doesn't look great. Oh, well, this happened, and this client was mad. And I'm like, okay, well, then it's not great.
Right, yeah.
But she's really healthy, too. She does a great job.
She does.
Yeah, because she's a 9-1, right?
She says that she's winged 8 more lately, but
interesting.
I think that was like last year because there was a lot of injustice stuff going on, and so she felt more like inclined to say something than she typically would.
Yeah.
But I think I would say she's a 9-wing-1 probably.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we got like 20 minutes to get into wings and the rest of it, so let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've
All right.
got wings, triads.
Lines, yeah. So we'll start with wings.
We've got wings.
So your wings never change. They're always the same number. So me is an 8. I have a 9-wing and a 7-wing.
So it's the numbers above and below.
The numbers above and below, always. And then if you're a 9, because there's not 10, you're either a wing 8 or a wing 1. And the importance of the wings is for growth, for the Enneagram to be effective. You want to start with looking at what your neighbors will tell you, what the wings tell you. So as a 8-wing 9, I tend to shy away from the 7, but the 7 usually has good advice for me if I will look at it. And Dr. Tom, the guy who taught me, talked about, you know, have you ever seen an airplane with one wing? Well, no. Like it requires 2 wings to fly, and each wing is of equal importance.
Yeah.
So leaning on your dominant wing, which most of us do, is going to have your airplane flying sideways. So to get your airplane back level, you need to embrace and understand your less dominant wing.
That's good.
And it's good to know, you know, an example of that. You know, I've been waiting to tell this story.
Go ahead.
So Clint is a 2-wing 3, so that means his less dominant wing is his 1. So we all park, you know, close to each other back here, and I noticed, like, for a few days in a row, like, there was trash bags in the back of his truck, which now I know were carpet, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But that wasn't what bothered me. It was the Johnny's pizza box that rode back there for the better part of a week when we have a dumpster, you know, 100 feet from our front door.
Or a trash can right inside the door.
And every time I would walk by it, it was helping me get healthy because I realized this is not my truck. I don't need to worry about it. If he wants 800 pizza boxes back here, it's okay because it's his truck. And I remember telling you that story. Me, you, and Kelsey were laughing, and then you talked about when you moved to California.
Oh, yeah.
Tell that a little bit, and how you shied away from that less dominant wing and how embracing it changes things for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we moved to California, I was in grad school. It was just me by myself. And, I mean, there's a lot of trauma in that. But the reality is that I had all these boxes of my books and my clothes and all this stuff. And I just kept them in boxes. Like I felt like, well, I'm not going to be here but 2 years. Like, why unpack all this stuff? Like, and I never got around to it. I was too busy being social and taking care of people and learning about therapy and figuring out how to. I was like, that's a waste of time. It's inefficient. I'm not gonna, I can live out of this, and it wasn't bothering anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, that wasn't taking care of me. The one allows me to be authentic to myself and go, no, like, dude, it's actually easier when you have stuff out of boxes. Mm-hmm. Take the time to do it. Mm-hmm. But I was too concerned about being at every meeting and being at every class, and I'm like, and those sort of things. So, same thing with the pizza box. Like, I was too busy like getting to work. I didn't even see the pizza box because I think JC like threw it back there with the bags. Because I put the carpet in there, and I never put trash in my truck. She's always putting cardboard for me to take through recycling. So that's what happened, is that she dropped the pizza box back in there, and then because I never touched the carpet bags, I never looked back there, because I'm not very anal, so I'm not like checking my truck out every day and making sure it's sparkly shine. I don't take it through the car wash twice like some people in this room.
Yes, yes, I have been known to do that.
So anyway, but what I've learned being a business owner and being, who I'm having to become, I guess, is being more detail oriented, having structure actually makes me thrive even more so. Mm-hmm. Putting the structures in place in the business and policies and a manual and all the things we've done in the last couple of years. And expectations, it actually makes everybody else thrive. Because I would come in probably 2-3 years ago and say, hey, guys, I need this. But if you don't want to do it, it's fine. Mm. And then nobody would do it. Yep. And now I'm like, hey, I need this. Mm-hmm. And then you can come to me afterwards and say, hey, I don't really feel comfortable with that. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's renegotiate. Mm-hmm. But when I was more unhealthy, my initial reaction would be like, I wanted you to do this, but I also want to take care of you at the same time.
Yep. Mm. Yeah, and it's important to know both, embrace both of your wings. Because, again, they never change. But leaning into the less dominant one, which for me is a 7. If I'm not at work or at church or at one of my kids' ball games, I want to be at home. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite place to be. But the 7 says, hey, like, maybe you should go do this. Like, break up the monotony, because that's not fun when dad only wants to go home. Mm-hmm. And the kids are like, can we go see a movie? Especially with my son being a 7. Those are wings. And then, Natalee, you want to talk about lines a little bit?
Should I say what everybody's lines are?
Nah, that's a lot. Maybe just as a 1, then Clint can talk about it. We can talk about his as a 2.
Lines are just the lines of stress and growth. So every number has a growth number and a stress number, which I kind of talked about. As a 1, I go to a 4 whenever I'm acting a little unhealthy. I go to a 7 whenever I'm being a little more healthy. Mm. So,
what's a 2 go to?
A 2 goes to an 8 in unhealth.
Unhealth, I know that. Yeah, what's the healthy one?
And then a 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true, because I really don't care what people think at this point.
Right.
I feel the tension of caring, but in the last year or two, like with having to do this podcast and all those kind of things, it's like you can't. Right. I mean, if you go read comments and stress out about what everybody thinks about it, like I'm going to be a mess. So yeah, that makes sense.
Then one of my favorite things that I think you might have said to me is that whatever your healthy number is, like I will be a better 7 than any 7 will ever be.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
I'm the healthiest part of the 7.
That's good.
And when a 7 is healthy, they're going to a different number. So
they're going to a 1.
I think they go to a 5 and.
Healthy, yeah.
They go to a 5 in health, stress in 1. So you usually like
that's so funny.
Yeah, so you co-partner usually. Whatever you go to in health, they go to you in stress. Which is funny whenever you're like a couple and you have like you grow to them and they sink to you. Let
me tell this story. So JC, I've been talking about the Enneagram for like 5 years, and she's like, I'm like, you need to take the test. She's like, blah blah, I'm not doing that. And so one night she's like, I'm going to take it. And so I'm sitting in the living room and she's at the table and I can see like her eyes over the computer, I'm like, you don't have to take it, babe. You're a 1, Yeah. And she's like, oh, I'm taking it, and I'm like, a 1 would say that, Yeah. Anyway, and she gets done and I see her look up and she's like, I'm a 1. I'm like, yeah, I know you are.
Right.
Oh man. So funny. But reading the Enneagram Institute thing about couples, right, is really awesome. But
yes.
JC was like, why are we married? Like when we were reading 1s and 2s, like in their unhealthy state,
Yes.
It's a dumpster fire.
I think which is surprising to me, but they say that a 1 should be with a 1 or a 3, and same with a 3. A 3 should be with a 3 or a 1 because they're so go, and it's hard for you to be with someone who's not like that. But then at the same time, it can be healthy for you to be with someone
Yeah.
who's not like that. So,
That's where I would divorce from the whole thing, is when you start saying who should be with who and how
Yeah.
somebody should be. I'd be like, hold on. God does all kinds of things to sharpen
Right.
you and prune you and refine
but I
you.
have noticed, like, typically couples do happen to partner up in the way that, like, obviously there's people who don't, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of 7 and 1 couples,
Mm-hmm.
and I know a lot of 3s and 6s.
Well, opposites attract for sure.
Right. So you do see that as far as like a majority standpoint, but it's not like you cannot marry me if you're not a 6 type of thing.
And the importance of lines, just one example is a good friend of mine. He is a 7 through and through, but he was in a very long season of stress, and he tested as a 1. His counselor thought he was a 1 for the majority of their time. I was like, before I knew about the Enneagram, I was like, yeah, he's a 1. But once I got to know more about it, he looked like a 1 because of the season in life he was in. He wasn't able to be himself. He was being controlled. He was, allowing things to not let him be his full, 7 self. So for me, as an 8, in stress, I go to 5, and I'll withdraw, and my 7 friend, Ashley, if I go a few days without texting her, she'll text me and say, why are you going 5 on me? And I want to slap her through the phone because she's so right. I'm like, okay, you're right. I shouldn't. And then in health, I go to a 2. And talking about partners kind of linking up, my wife is a 2, and God has used her to teach me and show me how to have empathy and compassion and serve others. Because when I go to a 2, I bring my 8 boundaries with me because I don't have a problem saying no. So that's why understanding, it's called it's their stress or heart point, integration, disintegration, or the high and low point of understanding what. So for you, understanding the high low of a 2, which is going to be a 4 on the high end and a 8 on the low end. So helpful to know that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I can tell, it's usually when I've been like graceful, patient, and then I don't have enough, and then I'm like, we're done.
Come on, just say it. Just do it. Just say it.
What?
No.
Oh, that's what
when
I
you
want
go
to
to
do.
an 8.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, like when you've been great, you've been patient, you've been gracious, and then finally you just have to
Yeah, my brain's like, don't filter anything.
yes, it's coming out.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Michelle, we identify it now. Like, it's okay in our house to say, hey, you're going to an 8 right now, because she'll go real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and blow up.
And then also another one of the things that I think changes up, I don't know, this is why the Enneagram is so complex, I feel like, but another thing that's my favorite is the social, sexual, or self-preserving,
Yes,
which is your subtype. So as a 1, you could be a social 1, you could be a sexual 1, you could be a self-preserving 1. So I identify with the self-preserving, so I tend to protect myself before I go out and become social or do anything like that. So everybody can change.
Yeah, the subtypes.
So you flow through those 3 things?
You have a dominant 1
Yes.
that you...
Are you supposed to try to find balance in those 3
Yes.
things? Ah.
Yes.
You are supposed to kind of identify your initial, 1, 2, 3, and then try and flip it to where you focus more on what your least dominant 1 is.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So
Okay.
social, sexual, and what?
Self-preserving.
Self-preservation.
Gotcha.
And the new name for the sexuals, because some people find
Good.
that where it's the 1-to-1
Okay.
is what they call it now.
Yeah, whatever, it's sex.
Yes, but it's,
Well, it makes sense. I mean,
Sure.
you want to make it as
It's just
less
intimacy,
intrusive.
emotional,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better.
But-
I think intimacy would be a better word, whether it's sexual or intimacy in general. That's really hard for people.
Sure.
I mean, we work with sex addiction all the time. We say it's an intimacy disorder. It's not about the actual
Right.
sex. It's about
Yeah.
not knowing how to be intimate.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to connect.
Yeah. And the thing about subtypes and knowing them, that's kind of like the hidden door behind all of it. Because if you don't know the subtype, a lot of people take some online test and they
Right.
walk around thinking that they're this number or that number, and that may not be the case at all, or they may be a different subtype, because with all 3 of the subtypes, with each number, you have a counter type that is like the opposite of the other 2. So for an 8, I'm a social 8, I'm the counter type. So I've had people think that I was a straight up 9 or a straight up 2 because I don't have the same, I don't come across
self-preservation.
Yes, of self-preservation or a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
So and for people, getting started, if you've never heard of the Enneagram or don't really know, it's a lot of information in this time we've spent. Like, just start by finding your number and then looking into your wings. Just start there, because as you get to know that part, you will progress into understanding your lines and then your subtypes, because you can't take all the information on at once unless you're a 5. And then you're going to want to know it all. Because I laugh when, I do have one test that I send out that is a pretty accurate online, because there's so many out there. Please don't ever pay for a test. There's good free ones. Truity is a good one. But at the end of taking a test, I had a client that they did not think they were a 5. And I told them, I was like, listen, when you get done with the free test, it's going to ask you if you want to pay for a more detailed report. Please don't do that. Save your money. So they come in the next week. Yep, I'm a 5. I paid for the detailed report. I'm like, why? You could have saved $10.
Investigator, baby.
But they wanted to know all the information.
But I feel like the subtype was the very last thing I found out about the Enneagram. It was
well, why would you start with that if you don't even know the first one?
2 years into it, and then someone was like, have you heard about the subtypes? And I was like, no. What are the subtypes? And so then I got into a whole thing about that. And then I think the last thing would be triads is the only thing that splits us up. So I think 8, 9, and 1 are the gut triads. So they're very instinctual people. And then there's 2, 3, 4 are the heart.
Yep. The
feeling.
Heart.
So they do things based off of feelings. And then 5, 6, 7. I don't know what they're.
The head triad.
Head, yes. So the think.
And that's why 6s can be so hard to work with, because on either side of them, they can't get out of their head. Both of their wings, all 3, them and their wings are all in the head triad.
Yes.
And it makes it difficult.
Well, I would say, for maybe an 8, right? I guess that's kind of what we're talking about is everything's going to be difficult for whoever you are in your things, because some people can't deal with people who are emotional.
Yep.
Right. So people who are strong feelers, 2, 3s, 4s, people are like, they're the worst because they feel everything. And then you got to deal with that when maybe a 9 or an 8 wants to just directly say it and nobody be upset or get over it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
It is. But because 2, for instance, your 2, 3 are in the heart triad, but your wing 1, you have some of the head triad in you.
No, gut
triad. Yes, that's what I meant. So, but that's what I'm saying is one of the wings from, I think, almost all of the other numbers, because as an 8, at 8, 9, I'm in the gut, but I have a 7 that's telling me that I need to feel.
Oh, so you got some balance.
Yeah. So basically, if you're a 9, 3, or 6, who would have no balance, because either way they wing and they still are in their triad.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So they're kind of, it's more difficult.
Oh, okay.
To get out.
Yeah, or in their heart or in their gut. So so there's a number in all 3 of the triads that kind of feel stuck.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then with 3, 6s, and 9s, a 3 being married to 6 or any of those, when you're going to your health point is your partner's stress point.
Right.
So that's why, 3s and 6s, or again, any number when they're unhealthy. I know I've said that a bunch, but those are the ones that are tied together in a way in which I think they're the only 3 that are set up that way.
Yeah, 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah. Let's end with what Enneagram, I was going to do a Enneagram on us. Enneagram type is Jesus.
Oh, my goodness. Man, let me run through these real quick. All right. 1s, I'm going to give a few names because we got a few minutes. Paul, the older brother, the prodigal son. Jerry Seinfeld, Mary Poppins. A 2, John, Snow White, Cinderella, Princess Diana. 3s, Jacob from the Bible, Oprah Winfrey, Lightning McQueen, Madonna. 4s, Joseph from the Bible, Amy Winehouse, Prince, Johnny Depp, Eeyore. 5s are Thomas from Doubting Thomas. Then Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Ross from Friends is a 5. 6 is Peter. from the Bible, and Ellen DeGeneres, Tom Hanks, Frodo Baggins, for all you Lord of the Rings fans, Piglet, Chandler Bing is a 6. 7's King Solomon, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Peter Pan, Aladdin, Tigger. 8, Samson from the Bible, Muhammad Ali, Dr. Phil, Tony Soprano, Princess Jasmine. And 9 is Jonah. And then some real life people are Bill Murray, and Jonah was a real life person, I know that. Barack Obama, Abraham Lincoln, Winnie the Pooh, and then Toe Mater. Mater is
Another real life person.
Yes,
Yeah,
right?
another real life person.
But your question was, what type was Jesus? And Dr. Ian Cron, I think he's a doctor, either way, Ian Cron, who wrote The Road Back to You, wonderful book, says Jesus was all types, because he can identify with everybody, no matter what type you are, no matter what subtype you are. Our goal is to be like Jesus as Christians, so we have to do the same. I can't live in my 8 box. I have to view people the way that Jesus does and understand that my way is not always the right way. I have to, Jesus' way is always the right way. But as I'm learning to be more like him, I need to look at every other number and have compassion and understanding for them, and realize that they're not in the place that I'm in. They may not have been to therapy, because that Jesus can relate to every human. He knows what our struggles are. So Jesus was right in the center of the Enneagram. He's all of it.
That's awesome. Natalee, any closing thoughts for you?
Nope.
No, all right. I appreciate you guys coming on. This was awesome.
I
We could have done it for a long time, but I think it's going to be helpful. And if you're out there and you're in need of some therapy, Andy and Natalee are awesome, and we have other people who are on our staff who can help you out. Andy's an Enneagram coach, and I mean most of us here know enough to muddle through it. So if you are interested in finding out your type, give us an email or call, or if you want Andy to come in and talk to your staff, talk to your church, help figure out, we love connecting with community members and helping people know each other better, so we can have better discipleship and intimacy and relationships, so that we can keep making our society and our world a better place in the name of Jesus. So
Yeah.
thank you guys so much. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you as always for listening. We're going to have another one this Friday, so we'll launch 2 or 3 in the next week. And just, if you're listening to this now, Dr. Caroline Leaf will be on the podcast. I think next week, is that right? Yeah, next week. So best-selling author, New York Times bestseller, psychologist. So just giving you guys a heads up that'll be a good one to listen to. So anyway, God bless you and have a good week.